So are you looking to pass your real estate brokerage exam? In this video, I'm going to share with you the tips and tricks and how I studied to make sure to pass in 30 days. Yes, 30. You could probably even do it in 14, but this is how I did it in 30. So if you want to find out, stick around. My name is Adela Phillipson, and in this channel, believe it or not, it is regarding my journey going from a $100,000 realtor to having my own brokerage and building it up to $1 million. I don't know how long it'll take, but I'm gonna give it my all. First starts with passing the real estate brokerage exam. So this is what I did. I am in Southeast Florida, and I signed up with Gold Coast School because I am a wife and a mother of two, and I actually had 3 active listings, so I was constantly showing in person, as well as having 3 contracts or houses under contract. I couldn't do the 2-week where it's like, multiple days in a row, so I actually opted to do the live stream from home because I would lose time in dropping the kids off at school in the morning. So I made sure to do a live stream, and it was Tuesday and Thursday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, I had previously tried to do the night class, but after a couple night classes, I just couldn't do it. I was so exhausted and falling asleep. I think I might have fell asleep on one of them. So I called Gold Ghost, and I said, you have to switch me. I'll do the 9 to 6 Tuesday and Thursday. So I switched to that, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. So go ahead and make sure to get the physical book. I highly recommend it because you're going to see exactly why. Don't just rely on the electronic. Go ahead and get your book. It's already included in your fee. Typically, I asked and they're like, well, you're going to get a book anyway, or ask them to ship it to you. It's well worth it. So to start off, when you attend the first class, the professor is going to give you not cheat sheet, I guess maybe they call it cheat sheet, but it's where they give you the highlights of the entire book. Okay, they're going to say here, for example, page 187, and I kind of drew right here. Do you see where it says class? And I kind of highlighted that section. So they're going to tell you exactly which lines to kind of learn and know. So what I did, and it will take you days, I think it took me 3 to 4 days. Mind you, I was just binging a Netflix show or a movie or whatever in my jammies, in the morning after dropping the kids off from at school. I would come, spend a few hours, and then kind of, by 9:30, 10, whatever, get my day going. So anyways, you're gonna highlight, okay, every single line, and I specifically marked it class. That means that is the topic and sentence, whatever it is, that you need to understand. Now, when the professors give you a cheat sheet or tell you what you have to learn, that's for the class exam. That's not for the state exam. Okay, there is actually more information in this book that you have to know for the state exam, but don't worry, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that. So what you're going to do, after the first class or so, listen, my biggest thing was I read ahead. So when I got the book, I read a couple chapters ahead of time. So I kind of already knew a little bit of what was going on. I didn't go too deep, but I kind of just, to try and get into that student mentality. So once the teacher then gave me the cheat sheet, even during our break or lunch, I was already starting to highlight. So I highlighted all the sections, so I kind of knew the little pinpoints and verbiage and lines to really focus on. And then after the first class, then I started really highlighting the entire book. So I already had the highlights done within a few days. So my entire book was highlighted. I think I sent my husband to Office Depot and he got me a 6-pack of highlighters because one will probably last you 2 chapters. So you really need a whole set of highlighters. So after I highlighted the sections and after I started reading ahead, my biggest thing was if I already read the entire chapter, I would go to the back to the quiz, right? You take the quiz, You kind of understand what you understand. You know, okay, this, I remember this from the sales associate. Yeah, that makes sense. This, that, whatever. But then if there was one I couldn't really figure out, I at least knew to pay attention when the professor was actually covering it during class. So it was almost getting like double class rather than a teacher trying to teach you, you remembering, then just forgetting. And then you read the chapter and you're like, did the teacher cover this? Instead, it's kind of the opposite. You read the book, you take the quiz, you understand, and then he's just reinforcing everything. And then if there's something you really were stuck in and you really need him or her to explain to you, it makes it a lot easier for your brain to actually remember. Now, one of the biggest things for me when I highlighted, and this is how you pass for the state exam. So let's say he or she, but in my case he, wonderful professor, he marked, like, he told me what to study for the class, right? But then sometimes he would say certain things or give a story about a certain situation that really helped me remember. Then I would kind of do some notes or maybe a star. But more importantly, if he was discussing anything and everything that comes out of their mouth is important for the state exam. But that's the difference. He would talk about this section, for example, but he wouldn't really talk about this. Or this was just like very generic, but this was a little bit more difficult to learn. Or in this case, he talked about this, didn't really talk about this. So not only did I already know for the class I have to learn this, in the class, oh, you know what, forgive me, that's for the class. Let me show you another page. Like this. So this is the class. He mentioned this, so I highlighted that because that was for the state. He didn't he said kind of skip over. He didn't really go into this. And sometimes I would question. I'd be like, hey, what about? He's like, oh no, you don't have to know that. Like that's fine. Or for example, so it was interesting. Let's see. So like this was very interesting. See how he has like, I have class right there. I had to study that for the class, so I knew that. But he also kind of mentioned things in here. And he also mentioned things in here, but it's not for the class, right? So then what happened is, so I'm reading. I have everything highlighted that I'm supposed to have highlighted because that was like done, first thing. Then he's teaching me and I'm like, oh yeah, I read that. Oh, I remember that. Oh, that was tricky. I didn't understand that. What was that? And also I noticed if he was jumping from topic to topic, I'd go like looking for it, like principle, like here, for example, it's like principle of conformity, principle of contribution, principle of substitution. The class, you have to know about the principle of substitution. I'm like, okay, cool. But technically, because he talked about principle of conformity and principle of contribution, I made sure to study those. But he didn't talk about these two. See that? He did. So it's kind of like cutting everything down into 40% or something. Now remember, again, just because it's a terminology and it's a cheat sheet doesn't necessarily mean that's the answer, because the way that they ask the questions is very, very tricky, which leads me into leads me into how to pass for the exam. So I talked to you about doing the quizzes. Those little quizzes in the back of the chapter is just the beginning, okay? But if you can really do those every single time, especially by yourself before the professor even starts teaching you, that'll be really helpful because the way that they ask the questions is huge, okay? So here, let me show you. This was really funny. I find it funny because I'm geeky and I'm nerdy. Don't let this face fool you. But I think it was like the first week I had just started. I told my husband, I'm like, I kind of want to take the exam in the back just to see how I do before I actually start learning everything, to understand where I'm failing, but more importantly, to get your brain in the process of learning how they ask you the questions, but more importantly, how they trick you. So I took the quiz. There's 126 questions. I didn't even do the math questions, just so you know, and I'll talk to you about the math questions as well. So I took the exam. I got like 60% correct. And I was like, cool. I only need a 70% for the class and then a 75 for the state to pass. So I'm not that far off. And a lot of this has to do with just experience. And more importantly, it's a lot of repetitive information from the real estate associate class. So I would highly recommend, maybe you're not looking to open up your own brokerage, but if you can at least take the broker's exam as soon as you have after the 2 years, and you definitely have a good amount of experience under your belt, go ahead and take it, because you might start to forget some of the things that you had previously learned from the first exam. Because I want to say it's like 80% of the information in this broker exam is from the actual real estate sales associate exam. And they did also give me the real estate sales associate book. Like, they gave me both books, and I was like, holy moly, there's absolutely no way I'm going to pass this. But all I did was study the broker exam. I didn't even open that real estate sales associate book whatsoever. So anyways, take the test, okay, and really figure out, like, I knew that answer. Why did I pick that one? And then you'll really understand, oh, it's because they said except, or, oh, I didn't see that word not, or instead of, or certain little things. And you'll also notice patterns. One of the patterns my professor mentioned to me is, like, if there's 4 questions and 3 of them are very similar, and even though you don't think this one is correct, this is the answer, because otherwise these 3 wouldn't be so similar. So for example, if they ask you a really tricky question, and the answer is like 15 years, 14 years, 13 years, and then this is never, likelihood the answer is never, because these were too close, too similar. So that was one of the amazing things. Now, okay, I'm going to talk about the exam. So you have to pass your exam. After you pass your exam, you have to get your fingerprints. And then after you get your fingerprints, you'll get approved to take your state exam with Pearson VUE. Go ahead, and after you sign up for the class, just go and sign up to get your fingerprints taken right away. I did that, like, I think the first or second week of signing up to take my class. So since I did the 4-week session, about 2 weeks in, or something like that, it wasn't close to me finishing, but I kind of did it right away. In fact, actually just drove to a Gold Coast school, because last time I had done it through a third party and it took a little bit longer for my fingerprints to go through. I have a clear background check, of course. So I went to Gold Coast. And it was funny because I actually had signed up, I think, like on Friday night to get my fingerprints Monday morning. And so I dropped my kids off at school. I drove to Gold Coast. I got my fingerprints, I think it was like at 10 in the morning. And then, like, by Wednesday, I want to say, or Thursday, I might have been Wednesday, I got an email saying your fingerprints came back, you're cleared, you can go ahead and sign up to take the state exam with Pearson VUE. So then I talked about it with my husband, and I said, you know what, I just started taking the class, and I'm wondering how much time I'll need to study for the state exam after I take my class exam. And then I just told him, I said, am I crazy to think that maybe I should take my state exam immediately after taking my class exam? And then he asked me, he's like, well, can you? And so I remember the next day I had actually asked my professor, and maybe he remembers. If you're watching this, I'm curious if you remember, but I had specifically asked, hey, when do we take the class exam? And he mentioned, he said, we're going to finish Tuesday, because we're supposed to finish Thursday, right? He goes, but we're actually going to finish the textbook on, or maybe it was that Thursday. I forget exactly, but he basically said on Thursday, which is the last day of class, You show up at 9 and then he reviews until 12. And then after 12, technically speaking, we get we get a link that pops up in our account, which is the actual class exam, and you just go ahead and take it. There's no video recording. You're not on a webcam. It's not class. It's not like everybody has to take it at the exact same time, and if you don't pass by 6 p.m., it's over. It's more like you finish the class, you do your review from 9 to 12 on that last day, and then they give you the link in your account. And whenever you feel most comfortable that you're ready, you just go ahead and take the test. So my whole plan was, okay, if it's Thursday, and let's say class review is done at 12, and I just take a break, a nap, a shower, a lunch, hang out with the kids, and then I take my class exam at 3:30 after the kids are settled. Then it might take me 2 hours to complete. I'll be done at 5:30. So then on Friday morning, I can actually go ahead and take my state exam. So I went onto Pearson VUE and I went ahead and scheduled it for that Friday morning. And I remember talking to my professor and everyone in class and just kind of told them like, yeah, I'm planning on taking the class exam. Oh no, I think he asked, he's like, how many are you planning on taking the class exam? And I was like, I'm doing it after class today. I said, I actually have my state exam tomorrow morning. And so everybody was like, oh, she's gonna do it. And I just thought to myself, like, I feel pretty confident. I've been reviewing, I've been studying. I actually did review on my off days and on the weekends. I would say about like 2 to 3 hours on Saturday morning and 2 to 3 hours on Sunday, just because in terms of like kids sleeping in, clients aren't really bothering me that early in the morning on the weekend. During the week, I didn't really study other than just kind of like maybe read chapters ahead of time, do the quizzes, just like any little things, any little time I kind of had, I studied. I wasn't like full on book mode, 10, 12 hours a day studying or anything like that. I wasn't staying up at all because again, a lot of it is very repetitive from the previous exam. Oh yes, the math. So I did not study for the math. In fact, I kind of mentally checked out when he was reviewing the math. Although, this is what I did. I calculated. He said there's about 12 questions on the exam. But then I thought, okay, well, maybe even if I get like 6 of the 12 right, because I am really good at math, thankfully, I thought, okay, maybe 6 out of 12, I'll get a higher grade. But this is what I understood. 8 out of the 12 questions actually has to do with calculating prorations and whether it's like a seller credit, debit, buyer, this, that, whatever. And if you have been doing real estate for a while, you will definitely understand, especially since you've been reviewing settlement statements, like you know when a credit is to a buyer and you know when a debit is to a seller. And if you're unfamiliar, the best thing to do is just pull up some old settlement statements and just analyze them along with your book. That's actually what really helped me, because there was one in particular, I can't remember right now, but one in particular, I think it was maybe like a debit to the buyer. And I constantly would look at my settlement statements. I'm like, oh yeah, remember when that buyer, and you just kind of remember that way. So I thought, okay, so if there's 12 questions on the math and 8 of them have to do with like debit, credit, buyer, seller, whatever, then that means I can get 8 out of the 12 correct. So I don't really have to freak out about all these other additional math questions. Thankfully, I had a really good professor. So during the review, he really forced us to practice math. I think it was like the Tuesday before our exam. So that was really helpful. So I hope this helped you. If you want to watch more, go ahead and click here. I wish you the best and have a great day. Go pass that exam or rewatch this if you need to.